Hi, welcome to the Yarn and Yarns YouTube channel. My name is Angela and all of the places you can find me should be linked in the description box just below this video. How are you today? Welcome to a Yarn and Yarns Extra. Let's just move my glasses up out the way a minute. While I'm chatting to you, I don't need to be reading anything. Already off on a tangent. It's Friday today and I wasn't actually planning on recording an extra video today. But I received a package in the post and it's quite exciting to me, and I thought maybe I would share with you something completely new in terms of my spinning. It's a completely new to me type of spindle. So I thought I'd share with you my first attempts at trying to spin on this spindle. So the story begins back 2 years ago in 2018. James and I went on a trip to New Zealand. While we were in New Zealand, we were visiting another friend of ours, a lovely lady called Tracy. And when we stayed with her, Tracy is a crafter extraordinaire. She treated me to some lovely fibre, and she also gave me a copy of Spin-Off magazine. It's the Winter 2018 edition. In this magazine, there was an article on the Scottish spindle, which I'd never heard of before. I now have my very own. Which I'm quite excited about, as you can tell. It's called a Gaelagain, but it's not spelt as it's sort of phonetically pronounced. It's actually spelt Dealgan, but it is, according to this article, pronounced Gaelagain. This article, just for your reference, is by Kirsten Flannery. I'm actually going to be referencing this to find out how to start off on this spindle, because there is a good photographic how-to on the second page of the article. It's a traditional Scottish spindle. According to the article, the oldest known is from the 1700s, but they believed to have gone back way before then. Apparently these were used predominantly in the Highlands of Scotland. There is no whirl on this spindle, so this is obviously a more sort of like commonly seen shape of spindle these days, and this disc here is called the whirl. This one happens to be a bottom whirl, but a lot of my spindles are top whirls, so it's just in relation to the placement of the disc and the hook, it sort of determines whether it's top or bottom whirl. As you can see, the Gaelagain has no whirl on it at all. It has on the bottom these notches and then this groove on the top, and this particular Gaelagain I purchased from a maker here in Wales, up in North Wales, and you'll find them, I'll put a link to their Etsy shop below, but it's called Niddy Noddy UK. There's a couple of different wood options when you purchase, and I chose a cherry wood for my Gaelagain. So I figured I might grab a little bump of fluff from that gorgeous package that my friend sent me in the week and give this a go. Wish me luck, keep your fingers crossed, this could be a disaster. I'm just switching around my setup because I want to sit so that my spindle, the backdrop is a plain wall, to hopefully, fingers crossed, I don't know how this is going to work yet, but hopefully it will help you see what I'm doing. But I've just dumped a bunch of stuff in the corner of the room just to get it out of the space that I need to be in. And included in that are a few jumpers that I've had scattered around the room here, where I've come up and been too hot and taken stuff off. And I just want to show you, they've been commandeered by Queen Newt herself. Cat. She has made herself very comfortable on a pile of my clothes there. Life of Riley, I tell you. Gathered the supplies that I need, so I've got my Gaelagain, I've got a lovely little sort of duck egg blue colour fibre, and I have a little bit of scrap yarn to use as a leader to get me going on my spindle. So I'm going to be entirely led by that article in Spin-Off magazine to try and help me get going. I have got my spindle and the yarn that I'm going to use for my leader. The article advises to basically push your thumb against the midpoint of the shaft of the spindle to sort of keep the leader yarn in place, and then wrap the leader yarn around itself a couple of times to secure it onto the spindle. So yeah, I think that's relatively secure. And then the next step is with the tip of the spindle pointing away from you, to bring that leader yarn back down towards you and hook it through one of those sort of like cross-pointed grooves on the spindle. So hopefully you can see, just bringing that across, oops, the centre. And then to secure the leader onto the spindle, the final step is to do a half hitch knot. If you can see at the tip of the spindle here, there's a notch right underneath that sort of arrow shaped end. So to do that, I'm just going to wrap the yarn around my thumb. So I'm taking my thumb behind the yarn to create a loop, almost like you were doing some sort of thumb method cast on, or the backward or a long-tailed cast on. Then I'm going to slip the tip of the spindle into that loop, and then let it drop off of my thumb and slide up underneath that sort of notch on the spindle. And then hopefully when I let go, yes, hey presto, the weight of the spindle is being supported from that length of leader yarn. The article does mention that these type of spindles have a tendency to have a fairly short spin time. There are no hints in the article as to what to do about actually joining your fibre on. So I think I'm just going to spend a minute or two pre-drafting this fibre, and then I'm going to lay the end of my fibre over the end of my leader and hope that they twist together, fingers crossed. So I've spoken about pre-drafting on some of my previous spinning videos, but basically I've just taken my little bump of fibre, and actually for the purposes of this, although it's quite small, because this is my first attempt at spinning on this new spindle, I think I'm just going to split this down a little bit so I don't have as much fibre kind of hanging out and potentially getting sort of twisted up and caught up while I'm trying to figure out this new spindle. So yeah, I've just split that in half, and now I'm going to just gently start teasing the fibre apart. Obviously I don't want to pull the fibre out so much that it splits apart, although if it does split apart it doesn't matter, you can join it. But the idea is just to put a little bit of sort of room between these fibres so that you can get a nice even yarn, fingers crossed, when you spin. You're not spending too much time trying to tug these apart and sort of feed them out onto your spindle. So all I'm going to do to try and get going is just overlay the fibre next to my leader. So my leader's there, fibre's there, and then I'm just going to move this fibre out of the way, hook it up over my elbow and give this a flick, and we'll hope that the leader and the fibre want to be together. Gonna give it another flick. I have to I was intently watching, it has joined together up here. I was intently watching that process and not keeping an eye on the Gaelagain, which started to creep round in the opposite direction. So I think this is definitely going to take a little bit of getting used to. So I'm going to give it another flick and a spin and just try and get that nice and secure before I do anything else. Okay, so I've caught that. So that seems to be nice and joined. I'm giving that a good tug there. There's not a massive colour differential between the leader and the fibre that I'm spinning, but I think you can see that's pretty seamless, and I'm giving a good tug there and it's not coming apart. So I reckon we can give it a go and get spinning from there. So I'm just going to take it slowly and do a little bit at a time, and just keep an eye on the spindle really. So yeah, it seems to be going okay, but there's definitely going to be a knack to getting some spin into this Gaelagain to get a reasonable amount of yarn. I've basically spun it a few times and I've only got a few centimetres there, but I'm going to wind it on and keep practicing and see if I can get through this little bump of fibre. The article recommends that when you come to wind your yarn around the middle of the spindle, you wind it like you would a noster pin to create a centre pore ball. But for the time being, I'm not going to worry about that too much. I just want to try and get going and get into the feel of this. And I think to that end as well, I'm going, because it's got such a short spin time and I feel a bit all fingers and thumbs at the moment, I think I'm going to do the park and draft spin method. So I'm going to give it a little flick and then park the spindle between my knees to save the energy of the twist that I've just put in, and kind of like gently tease the yarn out. So it's a slower spinning process, but when you're trying to learn something new, it always is quite slow, isn't it? Yeah. So I've changed the angle slightly, so you are looking at my knees here, which is most unladylike, I know, but you will be able to see what I mean by park and draft if you're not familiar with that. It looks like my hands are blowing out a little bit because of the light, but we're just going to go with it and hopefully we can make something that works in the end. So yeah, I'm just going to flick the spindle around, give it a good spin. So flick, and then I'm catching the spindle. That little flick has put some spin energy into the fibre between the tip of the spindle and my hand, and until I move my hand away from here, any energy that I've put into the fibre is going to stay here. Obviously I want to continue to make yarn, so I need to let some of that energy go up into the fibre and twist what's here. So I'm going to park my spindle between my legs, and I'm going to take the hand that I've been using to flick the spindle and swap it with the hand that's been holding the fibre, and then I can just tease out the fibre a little bit, and when I'm ready to add a bit of spin into the fibre that I've pulled, I can clasp my fibre at the point that I don't want the twist to go beyond and just let go, and I'm giving that a good tug, so a good bit of energy has moved up there. So I'm going to give it another flick, make sure it's going. That one's stayed for quite a long spin, so maybe it'll be one of those where the heavier it gets, so the more yarn on here, the longer the spin will go for. And then I'm just going to start pulling out my fibre, and then when I'm ready, let go so the twist goes up, pull out my fibre, let go so the twist goes up. And you'll get to a point where you'll be able to see the energy sort of like travelling up into the fibre, and you'll get to the point where you'll see that energy run out and there won't be quite as much twist in that top of that fibre as there is down the bottom of the fibre here. So I know it's time to stop and put a little bit more twist onto my spindle. So oops, that wasn't a very good one. My half hitch has come down the shaft. It's better. So twist, catch, park and draft. Let go and watch the energy go up into that fibre. Twist, catch, park. Let some of that energy go up into your fibre supply. Going to wind this on a bit now because it's getting twisted around itself. I'm obviously going very slowly, both because I'm trying to get used to the spindle and also because I am trying to show you more or less what I'm up to. So I'm going down over the end there, up to the top, secure it under that notch with a half hitch. Right, so I think I'm going to keep going for a little while. It looks a bit twisty and messy at the moment, doesn't it? That's partly my fault for having my fibre just hanging around there. But this leader's got into a bit of a state, so hopefully I can tidy that up as I'm winding my yarn round. But I shall get spinning for a wee while and I'll come back once I've spun through that little nest of fibre. So first Gaelagain spinning experience is done. I have some yarn. It's very scruffy, and I have some thoughts. Obviously this didn't really take me that long to spin, maybe about 15-20 minutes, so much slower than had I just been working on one of my traditional Turkish spindles or my world spindles. But there wasn't much fibre here to start with, so it really didn't take too long. You can see from the scruffiness of my fibre, as per the article in Spin-Off magazine, I think it would definitely benefit from being wound Nostopin style, so that the fibre is kind of securing itself around the shaft. Like this is very movable, you can see me just being able to kind of push it up and down, and because obviously it's a wedge shaped spindle, it's going to naturally want to sort of push up to the top there. And obviously the other advantage of winding into that style is you could ply straight from a centre pull ball. It's spinning, so you have to flick the spindle, put some energy into it to get the motion going and to put the twist into your fibre. But that's probably where the similarities end for me. Spinning on this Gaelagain is a very different experience. The fact that you have to sort of secure your yarn around the bottom of the spindle and then hook it up under the top of the spindle means that you have to leave a much longer piece of yarn once you've wound round onto your cop than I'm used to. So if you imagine spinning on this bottom whirl spindle, I'm going to be twisting my yarn, and then my yarn is just travelling from here to the hook, so you can get away with leaving a fairly short piece of yarn unwound before you hook back up to spin again. But with this, you've got to travel down, across and back up again, so that took a bit of getting used to. I was winding the yarn that I'd spun around here and then trying to hook it under and hook it back up, and finding that I was short, so that slowed me down quite a lot. Also, if you don't have your half hitch secured right up under that notch, I found that it really affected the balance of the spindle. So if for any reason my half hitch had sort of slipped down, then my spindle was wobbling quite a lot. And given that it's got quite a short spin to it anyway, that was slightly frustrating. I felt like I had to be keeping an eye on that all the time, along with the direction of spin of the spindle, because it does have quite a short spin time. Am I happy that I bought this spindle? Absolutely. It's a beautifully crafted thing, and the cherry wood smells amazing. I'm not sure if it's the wood or perhaps some sort of oil or finishing that they've used on. I mean, it doesn't look particularly finished as such, but I'm sure the magic of the wood turning, you have to do something to sort of finish off the product. Am I going to continue to spin on this? Absolutely. It's a beautiful, obviously, replica of a traditional tool, and the first time spinning with anything takes a bit of practice, doesn't it? Would I recommend this for a beginner? Probably not, because I have found it quite a different spinning experience to, say, my Turkish spindles or my traditional world spindles. Having said that though, if you wanted to have a go, I wouldn't try and put you off of that to start with, and because of the short spin, I think this is going to very much suit the park and draft method of spinning, which a lot of beginners start out with. So if you fancied giving a Gaelagain a go, then absolutely go for it, but I would say just bear in mind it's quite a different spinning experience if you then move on to some of the more traditional world spindles. So yeah, I'm sure I'll get better. My first Gaelagain spun yarn is a little bit scruffy, isn't it? But that's a lesson to me. Follow instructions if you have them. So yeah, if you'd like to have a go at spinning with a traditional Scottish spindle, you can find one like mine over on Niddy Noddy UK. I'm not sponsored, it's just a lovely tool, and I'm obviously happy to promote a small producer of lovely handmade items. Oh, one other interesting thing, I was about to sign off there. I did have one point where the spindle dropped because I hadn't got enough twist in the yarn just above the point of the spindle. That was coming down to me not leaving enough yarn to set myself back up to spin. When it dropped, it was fairly close to the floor. When it dropped, it landed and stood up on the base of the spindle, which just amused me. So yeah, there we have it. Spinning ineptly on a Gaelagain for the first time. I hope you found something to enjoy or amuse in this video. Until we get to spend time together again, I hope you get to do some of the things that you enjoy. Great big golly hugs to you all. Bye for now.